Welcome back again to part 11. Last time in Minecraft's most addicting mod, I radically accelerated progression with 2 HV macerators allowing me to crush all of my ores into an unmanageable waterfall of gold, copper, iron, silver, nickel, and chromium. With this pile of resources, I expanded my benzene power plant and built this, an ME drive, allowing me to store all of my metals, dusts, circuits, cables, and hundreds of other materials in a computer, and putting me firmly in the mid-game. This episode I will be fully utilizing these materials to construct a factory unlike anything seen earlier in this playthrough. So now, let's continue. Okay, what are we doing today? Because I've been working on this AE2 for so long. I guess I can keep working on it. We do not have a lot of storage here. I will need a few more 1K cells because these have run out of available types. And storage buses are a little bit out of reach right now. They'll need a bunch of quartz to make. So I'm just going to make more storage cells. We'll make 4 more because those were really cheap to make. So let's talk about what I plan to do this episode, because I don't actually have as much of a direction as I usually do. But mainly I just want to expand AE2 as much as possible. I want this to completely take over my base. Because as you saw there, I just took all the stuff out of my machines, dumped it in there. Now if I search up a wire, we have all of this already available. But I want to be able to auto-craft later. And what I mean by that is, I'm going to have a pattern provider on this assembler that will be able to insert and take from the assembler whatever I code it to do, and then I can use that to just, for example, for these 1K cells I'm making now, I can just click a button and it'll make the 1K cells in less than a minute. If I have a good enough system, I could make it in mere seconds. Okay, there's our cell housings. The assembler's done the 1K components, and this packer still has enough battery to complete all of these. So there's double the storage, and I can take everything that's left in storage still in these chests, and I can take it all over to there. Okay, so this is most of our ores. I still haven't brought the copper or iron, but you can see just how much lead I've stockpiled. I've been using this to get a lot of silver recently, because you can get silver from a lot of its different byproducts. In fact, I think I have some crushed lead I need to process still. So the next thing I want to do is I want to fix all of our many factories we have scattered around the base. This factory has been pumping out titanium and iron. Not as fast as some of our other factories, but still, this is really valuable. This factory is probably the most concerning. I just cleaned it out like half an hour ago, and it's already half full again. And then also the factories down here are just constantly going. Well, the conglomerate one isn't because the packer's missing, but it still has all of this stuff. And then, most saddeningly, our diorite processing line has been sitting here with a completely full output. Like, I just took out a bunch of aluminum, so it's still processing a little bit, but normally this is completely dead. So what I need to do is I need a lot more storage for all of these. I could use an item vault again, or I could use a super chest. These things can store a ridiculous amount of items. This one, the smallest one, can hold 8 million of one item. This factory, I think, produces 5 different items, and so I'd need 5 super chests for those, and then that's enough storage for the rest of the game. So I'm gonna try to get super chests on all of my factories, and then we'll use storage buses to add those into storage. Okay, storage makes it insanely easy to craft up some circuits. Because here's 18 more LV circuits, just for the super chests. Oh, 18 will only get us 4 super chests. Yeah, this is why I haven't made super chests yet. They need 4 circuits each. It's like making a whole new machine. Still won't have enough for everything, but I do want to at least get diorite processing back online with these 6 super chests. That's insane. So I'm gonna have to first fill all of these. And then there's also item locking, which I assume means that it will always be whatever item is currently in there. That's what it looks like, because it shows sodium there, so I think it'll only ever accept sodium. And with the sodium, I will actually turn on item voiding, which means that if it somehow reaches 8 million, it will start deleting new items that come in. just so that it doesn't stop the factory with 8 million sodium. Now, I don't think that will happen. I think we will beat the game before I have 8 million sodium, but you never know. But yeah, that was actually fairly easy, and we're using this pump to delete all the fluids. I will fix that now, though. I can just get 2 super tanks, and keep all the water and oxygen we get here. And then here's the last few super chests. Oh, this one thinks it has air. An amount of 0 air. Thank you, game. And now we're gonna cover up our glorious factories with just a bunch of super chests. Okay, so that's everything hooked up. And now when these output, there, that gold nugget immediately leaves and goes into one of those super chests. So now we have all of this accessible right there, and it will never overflow. So that is an upgrade I've been waiting to make since episode 7. Most of the rock centrifuging factories aren't gonna be hooked up to super chests, simply because there's no possible way it would produce that much. Storage is already rapidly growing. There's also, again, a slight mentality shift, not as great as the one earlier, last episode, but suddenly, like, I want to get everything processed. I want these big ingot piles. So before we work on the storage buses, I will just need to move all of these super chests that we just placed, along with this factory. I want to move everything upstairs for 2 reasons. 1, I don't want to drag a cable all the way over here. And 2, I want to keep all of our passive factories on the 2nd floor for future organization. And actually, we're going to organize where this is actually going to be. So yeah, we can fix a few errors from the original factory. For example, this pump system was kind of just thrown together. I didn't even put it on camera because of how thrown together it was. And there's much better ways to do it. We can just get a bunch of super tanks with fluid voiding enabled to handle the oxygen and water, and then we don't have to have a pump and water. Okay, there's all of our super chests. We'll have the ME cable running through the top with all of its storage buses, and then also a little bit across for the 2 super tanks I planned there. So let's go make those super tanks. These things are slightly more difficult than the super chests because of that hermetic casing. But other than that, they're pretty okay. And now that we have all of these lined up, let's work on those ME cables and those annoying storage buses. So, these storage buses really suck to make. Did a little bit of research. Not only does it need cables, which are now my worst enemy because of nether quartz, but it also needs an ME interface, which does get easier over time. Right now we can only do this HV assembler recipe, but because of these formation and annihilation cores, which need 4 engineering processors each, I think I might want a cheaper recipe, but we have access to EV circuits. I can get an EV assembler, and so I think I'm gonna try to use this recipe so that I only have to craft 3 batches of interfaces instead of 6. And the EV assembler is doable now. We have titanium, we have aluminum cables, we have the PVC needed in them, and we have all the components that go inside. Thing is, it needs to be in a clean room, so before we do that, I think we need to move the clean room, because right now it's too impractical to move the cable across here. Alright, now to tear this thing down. Okay, there's all of our plasticrete back. And I just made a little bit of clean room glass real quick, just so that it looks slightly better. And this time we're actually going to place it into the floor, because I want the clean room to be on walking level. And it's cleaning again. I'll need some light panels. And now we can actually see into our clean room, which makes it feel a little bit more integrated into the base. Okay, there's our HV power within the clean room. And here's our HV circuit assembler. So now this has proper power, I don't have to stick a battery in there. And then we're gonna have an EV normal assembler right there, and we're gonna have to put a battery in there. So let's actually make that assembler. The The main thing we need in this assembler are the EV circuits. We need 2 on the outside here and 2 in total for the robot arms. And then we're also going to need 10 motors, but these really aren't that bad. So something I've been doing in the background this whole time is smelting nichrome. This blast furnace has been in the background of almost every scene since actually like halfway through last episode. After I made that batch of titanium, I just started making nichrome. A lot of nichrome. This much is enough for an EBF. This much, which I'm not even going to put in my inventory, would add up to be enough to upgrade all of our pyrolyze ovens, which is actually exactly what I'm doing. So I'm going to bring these all to the wire mill and start slowly processing through it. The crate is full now. It's been going for so long. Okay, no, it's over. It's over. Okay, we've run out of power. Not a single turbine is running. Okay, a tree just finished. I'm going to manually go cut down some trees. I'm also going to take the backup manual buffer over here. Our AE2 system did temporarily die there, so if I needed anything from there, we would be dead. And that's also why we have the pyrolyze oven on a separate grid, done by Steam. Okay, so that's another thing on our to-do list, I guess. Upgrade pyrolyze again, and I guess I'm technically working on that over here, but that's only a 50% upgrade, and that doesn't actually upgrade the tree farm, which is the thing that's going wrong. So here's our temporary solution then. We're gonna take this super chest, we're gonna put an aluminum crate in its place, because we produce very little sulfur, so I can just manually filter this. Then this super chest can be our capox supply. Okay, so this will last a lot longer. And then I can auto output on that side, which actually saves us a conveyor. So this thing will fill up with thousands of capoc logs. Millions even, after a long enough period of time. This area just gets a bunch of trees at the same time. Like this one's ready to grow, this one's ready to grow, this one just grew and got replanted, ready to grow. Like they're all growing at the same time. Which makes sense because they're planted at the same time. So if I can just handle them all at the same time, then we're fine. Okay, now I can turn the factory back on. I'm not going to let things like titanium and lava run. And yeah, that is stable. So now we're going to make the EV assembler. This thing, of course, needs EV circuits. We need 2 on the outside and 1 in each of these robot arms. That means 4 EV circuits, and we have just enough microprocessor assemblies to do that. We just need some more plastic printed circuit boards, which unfortunately need sulfuric acid. Since we keep needing sulfuric acid for the plastic circuit boards, I'm gonna make a sulfuric acid factory. This is the beauty of AE2. Things were just sitting around. I can craft them basically instantly. Okay, we can use the screwdriver to make these things auto-output down, and so now both of these are full of oxygen. This thing will auto-output into here, now all I need is the water, but we ran out of aluminum drums. Okay, so now that we have everything coated, we can just stick 2 stacks of sulfur, and this should turn into 128 buckets of sulfuric acid. There we go, works like a machine, probably because it is. So it's not fully automatic, but later once I have like an export bus from AE2, we'll stockpile thousands of buckets of sulfuric acid with this. Okay, then we need diodes, electrum, and RAM. Here we go. Is this our second batch of supercomputers? We're just making 4 for our first truly EV machine. And now to get all the titanium components. Really no different than previous tiers, it's just that everything's a different color now. So we can turn a bunch of titanium into plates. We can turn a bunch of titanium into rods. Hey, will we need neodymium for this? Yes, we will. We need neodymium for this. Do I have any? Okay, so we have bastionicite, and bastionicite does have a big ore processing line that gives lots of neodymium, so I'm just gonna crush the very few pieces we have. I kept this stuff because it has a little bit of fluorine in it, and I want that. Wait, is that cerium? Yeah. What's cerium used for? Oh, plutonium-241 in the fusion reactor. Very informative. So because of ore byproducts, we won't have huge panics like we've had in the past where we realize, oh, there's this one material we're missing, because often one of the obscure ores that I've left in my system will have some of that ore as a byproduct. By the way, this HVEBF is being worked to the bone. First it's going to smelt 4 neodymium, then it's going to smelt 2 stacks of titanium, and then almost 2 stacks of nichrome. So we have our first 5 neodymium ingots here. Gonna turn them all into rods. We'll have to go to a neodymium mine later. I do know a few, and they're filled with a bunch of other useful materials. So now that we have these neodymium rods, we can actually do our motor craft. There we go, 10 EV electric motors. So now that we have our first EV motors, we can roll out a bunch of other firsts, like our first EV conveyors. And with a few more components, our first EV pistons, which means we can make our first EV robot arms. There's our casings, and there's our hulls. So we can make our first EV machine, which ironically is the most expensive one. The Advanced Assembler 3, and since this is an HV cable, it should be fine to take power from it. Look at that, we got Pink Machine. So this thing's gonna eat up our power grid. It uses more power than our EBF does. And so that it eats up the power grid slightly slower, we're gonna use it to make an EV crystal battery. Lapatronic energy crystal. And it's out of power. That's great. There we go. So this is using 4 amps of HV power to transform up into EV power. This thing is using 1,900 volts. Here we go. Lapatron crystal. And now it has to charge for a very long time. I don't want it to use all of our power in the process, so we're just going to place the silver cable back, and it's slowly going to use some power while it builds back up. So now to do what we were actually planning to do with this assembler, and that is to make some storage buses. So, to make a storage bus, we're going to need 2 MV pistons, 1 glass cable, and 1 interface per storage bus, which makes this insane. We're going to need 24 pistons, 12 glass cables, plus the ones to actually go to each of these things, and then we're going to need 12 interfaces, which is why we made the assembler in the first place, so that we can use this recipe. Let's start with the hard part, the interfaces. And while we're working on this, I'll work on the other things in the background. The main part that matters are these formation and annihilation cores, which need 4 engineering processors each, which for 3 batches will need 24 engineering processors. So we actually already have quite a few. Something that's mildly annoying about the engineering press is that it needs diamonds. Now, in the nickel mine that I completely cut out of last video, there was a diamond vein completely merged into the same mine I was digging in. And so we got a ton of diamonds, but turning them into blocks is annoying because we have to go back to our steam compressor. I really should make a new compressor, especially with this low power cost. That's as low as our macerator, so an HV compressor would only use 32 EU a tick. So this episode, I've been doing a lot of just background ore processing so far. The amount of dusts I have is just insane. There's even some unprocessed crushed ores, mostly gems. I think ingots is most impressive though. Look at the steel and aluminum I've built up. The centrifuge output is insane because I'll just leave impure ores in here and then wait like 3 hours, come back to this. Okay, here's our formation cores and here's our annihilation cores. And by my interpretation, these formation and annihilation cores are meant to, in the annihilation core, turn the item into energy, and in the formation core, turn the energy into matter. Because it's a matter-energy system, that's what ME is. So now we have these 6, and we can work on the ME interface itself. Never mind. Factory's dead, storage is dead. I hate this system so much right now, because, look, they're all on one day. They're absolutely all on one day. These are even closer. Because all the trees grow on the same day. It's so dumb. It's not random like vanilla. Okay, maybe I can just... Oh, no. Okay, we're gonna stay on this screen. The turbines are there. Okay, get the extractors running again. That'll get us a more steady source of wood tar. Okay, well, we were gonna work on the storage buses, but clearly we cannot do anything while that is just like that. I made a bunch of aluminum saw blades here. This is enough for 3 more saws. So I'm actually just gonna finish that now. Oh, I just have everything. Okay, there's the 3 saws, but that's not everything because we need deployers. Unless I have some. Oh, I do. From the old factory that I took down. Oh, and because I have the opportunity to do this, I'm actually gonna change the entire way I structured this, because Flurbin had a way better design. Well, I don't know if it was actually Flurbin, because Dragonium did a lot of the designs in that playthrough. But yeah, we can just place the deployers on the bottom over here, and that saves a lot of space. Oh, and now you grow. Okay. Cool story, bro. And hopefully the game doesn't crash when I do this. There we go. And the deployers plant. We should be going once again. Okay, yeah, it is planting on the outside. It will slowly get... No! Oh, no, no. Yeah, I gotta get used to the new size of the machine. That's terrifying. But yeah, we're gonna manually plant the first bit because I need these trees growing as soon as possible. The machine's working again. It's not trying to kill me anymore. And we got the pyrolyze ovens again. Back to the storage interface. Okay, that looks way better at that scale. So, now that we have the formation core and the annihilation core, the rest of the interface recipe is pretty easy. So we can just go into the assembler here, and start the recipe. By the way, this Lapotron crystal is already full, so there's 12 interfaces, and I would like to point out that interfaces have nearly the same recipe as pattern providers, and pattern providers are going to revolutionize the entire playthrough, probably later this episode. Okay, so now that the difficult part is out of the way, let's get 24 pistons and stack of glass cables. No, we don't need a stack of glass cables for 12, but I'm gonna need to actually connect these up. So let's start with those glass cables, because that's the part that concerns me. We need exquisite ruby to try to minimize nether quartz costs, and basically the only way to get that is through the sifter, unless I get an HV laser engraver, but I don't want to do that. No, that's kind of dumb. What if I get an HV laser engraver and an HV sifter? Yeah, let's do that. Okay, that was fairly easy. Get a sifter, and where did my pistons go? Laser engraver. So we technically did not need these, and that's why in editing I probably did not make even slightly a big deal out of it. But it just means that we can do old processes faster. And more importantly, with the sifter, we can get all of the byproducts a lot faster and a lot easier. Like here... Never mind. Like here... No, we can get an exquisite ruby already. Should I leave that in? So that's how we can get exquisite ruby easier, but why did we get the laser engraver? Well, it's so that we can get even more exquisite ruby. We can turn 2 flawless rubies into 1 exquisite ruby, meaning we have effectively tripled the chance of exquisite ruby. And also why I've put the laser engraver in the clean room is because by having this, we just unlocked a new kind of circuit that I will talk about when we need it. Okay, back to Fluix. So we have the 8 nether quartz for that, and then we're gonna need a little bit of service quartz, and so that will get us our first batch of Fluix. So using exquisite ruby means we use 4 times less nether quartz. And it begins. Okay, this was supposed to be a side project, it became the focus of the start of the episode, but here is our storage buses. So since there's actually too many cables in here, I can show off what these do right now. We can bring the ME cable over there, add this storage bus on. It says it's online, which means if I go in here, we have 1,008 gold nuggets in storage. If I remove this storage bus, they will not be there. We don't actually have any gold nuggets. So what this storage bus is doing is it's turning the super chest here into a part of storage. This works on any container, but now we have 6 more of them, and there's something I was gonna exclude. Oh yeah, sapphire. I don't like sapphire. But here, this is why it's powerful, because now all of those things are in storage. There's our silicon dioxide, there's our tantalite, there's our gold, and there's our magnesia. And we have plenty more. So I want to get all of these connected to storage. But that's why we're making so many cables, because we're going to have to extend it very far to achieve that. By the end of the episode, hopefully we'll have a factory to make these cables, because that's the point of this episode. Here we go. I think this is all of the cables we still need to connect up that factory and also the titanium factory. I slapped a storage bus onto there. So we're just going to drag the cable across the ceiling here. We're still missing a few. Wonderful. Can't get to the fluids yet, but we have access to all the dusts. So now if we search in storage... Oh, yep, they're at the top, right there. So our sodium, silicon, aluminum, and lithium. Actually, almost all of these dusts are from factories. That's crazy. And then also the sulfur in here. Now, because storage buses go both ways, did it dump my sulfur in here? It did not. I'm gonna do that. So now all of our sulfur is in that crate. And 4 more cables will get our fluids into storage. Oxygen and water. Okay, the last batch is crafting now. There we go. So all of this titanium and iron has all been attached directly to storage. And we can even see it here. Iron dust there, titanium dust there. This blast furnace is a bit busy right now, because it's still smelting nichrome. Don't ask why I still want more nichrome. But we now have an insane amount of resources. So, why did I actually want to attach all of these resources into storage? I don't need 2,800 buckets of water, and I especially don't need 3,300 pieces of sodium dust. So why have I attached this to storage? Well, it's because of auto-crafting. And auto-crafting is where I can basically request an item from storage. Let's say I want another storage bus, and I can code the recipe to send things into this assembler, and it'll output that storage bus back into storage so that I can build more stuff. And we can do that with anything. We can do that with plates, we can do that with rods. I can automate everything, so I don't have to go running around from machine to machine. So to start auto-crafting, we're gonna need an ME pattern encoding terminal to actually code the crafting recipes. We're gonna need these blank patterns to store the recipes on. We're gonna use this PVC recipe. And then the most expensive part, we're gonna need the pattern providers themselves. We're gonna use this recipe. And that means some more formation and annihilation cores, which I think we can just make right now. But before we work on that, we need to address a huge problem, and that is we are completely out of Certus quartz dust, and I don't want to go mining for it, and I don't want to get the sand for it, and so we're going to get a factory. So there's the 2 forge hammers, and there's the rock crusher. There, rock crusher with slate, that'll start running. Then we get a forge hammer here, already making gravel. The gravel's the fast bit, but this has to output over here. The sand is the slow part. That's why we're making the factory now, so that it can run for a very long time. So that's not going to be useful for a while, setting it up now so that we can have service later. Right now, though, we're going to have to go fly to some kind of desert or badlands and scoop up all of the sand there. Crazy that our sand actually lasted so long. The thing that killed it was Certus quartz. Thank you, AE2. I could go all the way back to the Certus quartz vein. I have actually a better one marked on the map. But that is miles away, and I don't think we need to get that much yet. Oh, I've stripped this area bare. I'll have to turn up the brightness in the video, because even with true darkness turned to its minimum setting, this is very dark. So we have a bit of our sand in storage. We can crush it all into quartz sand. I love AE2. And then we throw it in this centrifuge and wait a very long time. With an HV centrifuge, it is a little bit more common to get Certus quartz, but just not common enough. This is already a lot, though, so that's nice. Really, we did not need to do all of that just to make a few pattern providers. But we are going to be reaching to a lot of machines. Like, I definitely want these connected to the bender and wire mill over there. So that's going to need a lot of ME cables, which needs a lot of Certus, so that's why we did that. So now that we have so much Certus quartz, let's actually get that pattern terminal so that we can make patterns. So the first thing we'll need is blank patterns. These things will be encoded and they tell storage what to do when I ask for a recipe. And it's pretty cheap. MV circuits, red alloy wire, PVC, steel. I think we'll make 16 right now. And that was comedically easy. Now the pattern terminal itself, which is just missing a normal ME terminal, which is missing some quartz glass. Okay, there's the panel, there's the terminal, and there's the pattern terminal. Why is this so easy? But now we have a second terminal to our AE2 system, and this is where we make recipes. So the first thing we're going to code is a resistor recipe. Right now I won't include the plastic in it because we can't actually put liquid plastic in storage yet, but it'll request tantalum and carbon and give us 32 resistors. I can't put this pattern anywhere yet, so that's why we're going to make a pattern terminal. A pattern provider, sorry. We just made the pattern terminal. And now we can make 2 EV motors. to make 1 EV conveyor, to make 4 pattern providers. So this is the moment I've been waiting for. If I stick the pattern provider onto there, yes, you can make flat versions like that. It'll auto-output and allow inputs through there. And so if I get a pattern for the SMD resistors, right. Crafting CPUs, I forgot, we were so close. Good thing we made the EV assembler, because that was technically optional until about now. Now we can make the crafting units. 1K crafting storage is here, and for now we're just going to stick it onto the roof here. It says device online, so it works. And finally, I think we can craft a resistor. So we'll put it into the assembler, but right now, yeah, here's the carbon and tantalum that it just put in. Right now there's no polyethylene, so I can do that. Then it'll craft, we can look at our resistor count here. There's 14 now. Boom, 46. So, if the polyethylene was already in there, that would have been a completely hands-off resistor craft. So how this can get crazy isn't just the fact that we can craft recipes remotely. No, the reason it gets crazy is because we can chain recipes. So if I get a cable onto our centrifuge here and code a new recipe to make carbon dust, then for this example I'm going to remove all the carbon dust we already have from storage, there's nothing there. And I can ask for a resistor again, and now it'll say, okay, we don't have carbon, but we have the ability to make it with coal dust. So it's going to take the coal, it's going to centrifuge it, and then make the resistors. Or, wait, what? That was instant. Okay, and it's going. There's the resistors done. So yeah, this is gonna get very powerful very quickly. Anyways, that was just as a proof of concept. I actually don't want to waste a pattern provider on the centrifuge yet. So you can decode with shift right click. But that's going to be the rest of this episode. What we need to do is we need to get lines and lines of machines like Florban and Dragonium had, with wire mills, benders, alloy smelters, assemblers, macerators, centrifuges. We need all of those things lined up with pattern providers, and some of them even with level emitters and export buses just to constantly craft. This is why the AE2 system was a huge goal. So then, let's get the bender and wire mill going. This does mean we need to actually bring the cables down here, which is going to be quite difficult. So I'll need to craft up a bunch of new cables, so that's why I've been processing this Certus quartz. If you ever think playing factory mods is boring from watching these videos, you're wrong. This is the most addicting stuff ever. And AE2 is where it gets really addicting, because, I mean, let's order 16 cables here, and there it goes. And it's outputting directly into storage here. I love it so much. And then with the 16 cables we just auto-crafted, I can drag this all the way down to the wire mill and bender. And I'm going to use the large pattern providers like this, because I think they look a bit better. Sometimes they can cause problems though, which is why we go like this to direct it downwards. And now, these quartz fibers go directly into storage. Easy game. So right now we're going to keep both of these things on 1, which means we can't do fine wire and foil the fast way. That doesn't really matter, because any auto-crafting is faster. And we have 9 patterns, so I'm just going to start dumping out a bunch of different things. We'll put all the wire mill recipes in here, and all of the plate recipes in here, and then we'll put our 1 transistor recipe in there. And now if we go into craftable, look at this. This part of the terminal will be almost as big as the normal part of the terminal. There's going to be so many craftable things. Let's make some aluminum plates, let's make a little bit of, no. Right, we only have 1 crafting CPU, so we can only do 1 thing at a time, but that is a huge ability. So I'm making a few more 1K cells just so that we can store fluids in storage. That means I can store things like polyethylene and normal ethylene, sulfuric acid, hydrochloric acid. I can store those things in storage, and then we can autocraft with those. Right now we already have water and oxygen in storage, but those are being stored in those tanks because we don't have fluid cells, and so that's what I'm working on right now. Fluid cells work just like normal cells, but they can do 18 types of liquid instead of 63 types of items. That used to be 5 types. 18 types is way better. So there's 2 fluid cells. There, okay, soldering alloy is now stored in there. Why did we want soldering alloy? Well, because of the circuit assembler. Every single recipe needs it. So we're going to be automating that soon. Thing is, I've styled this area in a horrible way that doesn't let any cables get through. I think there's a pretty simple fix. Okay, there, now we can have the HV diode on the bottom. We can seal up the clean room again, it reformed, and now we're fine, and I can fit enemy cables up here. So you may be wondering how we actually get the cables into the clean room. And if I remember from Nomi Factory, yes, you can just take EMI cables through a machine hull. I don't even know how I figured this out. I'm pretty sure I just did trial and error and was like, oh, that works. But now I can automate all of these. If I had pattern providers, which is what I'm going to do now. Okay, there's the pattern providers we'll need for 4 more machines. And those 4 more machines are probably going to be the most important. In older versions of AE2, I'd have to have a separate circuit assembler for each fluid and then keep them stocked, but not in this version, because we have fluid auto-crafting. And let's just try making 8 of these. The circuit boards are in my inventory, but we have enough to just auto-craft 8. There, now it's making circuits. Wait a minute. That's not right. Okay, I'll have to recode that recipe. It thinks it only needs 1 of each, and it put way too much soldering alloy in. Okay, that was really weird. It shouldn't do that again. I did have to manually code that recipe. So now, like I promised last episode, we're auto-crafting circuits. And most of these components are also soon going to be auto-craftable. And so now, I guess I just make some blank patterns? Oh, it's... okay, that's a problem. Yeah, it says it's missing steel plates, which is wrong, and it's trying to craft steel plates with steel ingots, but it says it doesn't have any, which is also wrong. You know, while I try to think of what's wrong with this, I'm going to upgrade our pyrolyze ovens. So there could be some NBT tags going on, because all the steel plates and stuff can be affected by TFC heat values, like if it's white hot or something, and right now everything is completely neutral. It's not hot at all, but there could still be an NBT tag, and AE2 might not be registering that, and it's like searching for a steel ingot that doesn't have any NBT values, while the only ones I have say like heat 0, something along those lines. 21 seconds, that's really fast. The problem with that is I have no clue how to fix it. We're in a AE2 twilight zone, nothing works. Can I at least make ingots that don't have heat values? Yes, that works. Same with aluminum, but not steel, because it doesn't recognize those ingots at all. So yeah, it's definitely a heat value thing. I'll have to ask Flurban and Dragonium how that works. Okay, so I asked Dragonium and Flurban about it. This is a very common issue, and basically the only way to fix it is to manually code the recipes instead of using EMI. So I can just put one of my steel ingots and one of my steel plates in there, and then we can code a new pattern and this should work. So now I can try another blank pattern craft, and yes, it detects everything. It works. So after temporarily fixing that, I went a little bit insane. With the sand factory, a small stockpile of nether quartz, and plenty of machines already linked up to storage, I could make as many ME cables and pattern providers that I could want, and started automating absolutely everything. I automated 2 different assemblers for cables and machine hulls. I automated a new MV arc furnace to make wrought iron and glass. I automated the chemical reactor to make PVC and polyethylene, and I automated an extruder to make small gears used in pistons. To run all of this, I expanded the pyrolyze setup, which I explained on recording. So we have the double distillery setup. It's running all of our turbines at full speed, and we have 8 extractors to fill those with wood tar. There's still quite an imbalance. These things are just not able to keep up, but I can fix that later. This is an insane amount of power. I didn't think benzene could be scaled up this much. But this is outrageous. There's benzene buffers in the turbines now. By the way, a while ago I made some silicon wafers. We now have 304 silicon wafers sitting here. Don't know what I'm gonna do with them. Didn't really have any purpose in mind, I just wanted 304 silicon wafers. So finally, the last motor we're gonna automate is the EV motor. So now if I try to craft some EV motors, it'll just do it. There, 1 motor, 2 motors. That's miles easier. And actually, looking at that reminds me that supercomputers aren't automated. None of this is meltable, so there we go. That should be automated supercomputers. That was easy. Now, what's this all leading up to? Well, to bypass all the problems we're running into, like having to craft all the wires in here instead of just doing it in a crafting table like a normal person is because right now we can't automate through the crafting table. But with this cool machine called the molecular assembler, we can craft through the crafting table, but it's just ridiculously expensive. That's why we're getting EV components, that's why we're getting supercomputers. And because we can do 2 crafting recipes at the same time, we can do it right now. There we go. It's making the canthal, it's compressing the canthal, it's trying to make rubber, it's gonna fail, because this is what's happening in the chemical reactor. Though it is done, it is making the PVC liquid, and a lot of it. Just missing that cable, and there we go. So that's 5 EV motors right here, and that's 1 step closer to the molecular assembler. Oh, I made half as many as I need. Okay, here's the real test. Yeah, it only uses 327 bytes, so crafting computers do not need to be as large as I've been making them. There's our piston, and if I just make a supercomputer very casually, we need microprocessors, assemblies, which I didn't automate. Out of every component, it's missing 4 SMD inductors. That is amazing news. Genuinely, if it can go through that many components and only be missing 1 thing, there we go. I'm just gonna watch this. Did I seriously just autocraft an EV supercomputer? Another thing I'm noticing is that I'm hitting a critical mass, where anytime I'm missing a component, I just add an auto-crafting pattern for it. Manual crafting is going extinct. So there's just a few more things left for the molecular assembler, all of which we have tons of materials for. So we're gonna go over here into the clean room, and we're gonna craft up by far one of the most expensive things today. A molecular assembler. So I don't know if I explained this enough already, but this lets AE2 use the crafting table. I don't know why they made it so expensive, it's actually one of the cheapest machines in normal AE2. For now, we're just gonna stick it down here. But these things are so integrated into AE2 that they will take power from the pattern provider, there's unique patterns specifically for the molecular assembler, and all of the AE2 speed upgrades work on them, so these things are really easy to code. Might as well include the formation core and annihilation core. And because we used the recipe that makes 2 molecular assemblers at once, I think I'm actually just gonna do 2 separate pattern providers with... Wait, no, better than that even. Where you go pattern provider there, 2 molecular assemblers, another pattern provider there. These all work individually, except they both have 2 pattern providers attached. So AE2, for this episode at least, is mostly done. We're of course going to expand over the next few episodes, but I feel like I have done enough AE2 work, and there's one last thing I want to do before we end the episode. And it has to do with the fact that all of these machines are starting to get a bit full, and they're stuck on this old MV line that's still running off of a bronze boiler. We did just clear space in this direction, there's nothing on this wall. And that was partially just because I wanted to move upstairs, but also because I want to expand the base. And this isn't going to be a small expansion, because we're running out of space very quickly, but we just gained the ability to build so many new things, and one of the only limits at this point is space. So how far are we expanding it? Are we maybe doubling the base like this? Maybe even tripling the base all the way out to here? No. We're gonna bring the base all the way out to here, if you can see it all the way over there. Now, why we don't have a base like this already is because that's obviously really expensive to do. But we have AE2, so I'm gonna start auto-crafting all the materials for that. I'm gonna get some rock crushers, making cobblestone from many different varieties. We're gonna have shale, rhyolite, basalt. We already have gabbro and diorite. We're gonna have all of those rocks together, and then we're gonna use more auto-crafting to automatically turn them into bricks. You may have noticed a while ago I got this recipe in the mixer to automatically create concrete. But I'm not actually going to expand that way yet, because there's something else wrong with our base. You see, this front part of the base is ancient. It has been here for so long. There's still a chimney over here to make resin. That's just so insane that there is still a resin factory. There's coke ovens, there's a blast furnace. This is an ancient building. And hey, I'm all for keeping old buildings. We got those, but this isn't a good looking one. There's just holes in the structure. We had to stick a roof onto it, and it's also in the way. Like, I want to expand into this area, I want a second floor onto it. It just doesn't work. So we're gonna have to start all of this base rebuilding by replacing this entire section. I think I said this with some of the older TFC buildings, but building in TFC is so rewarding because it takes so much effort to build something cool, but once you do, it's so much more rewarding. And while there is an absolutely insane amount of things that you can build that would normally overwhelm most people, because of how difficult it is to get some materials, it's as if they aren't there. Front of the base is done. I did a little bit more tweaking with adding details there and redoing this little bit, and I think it looks quite nice. It's the first time I've tried to build anything gothic, or whatever this is with the futuristic stuff going on, but I'd say I'm doing pretty good for the first time. In the drawings I made of this base, I was worried that I'd go either too gothic or too futuristic. I don't think I've landed in either of those areas. I guess I'll see what you guys think. But yeah, the other part of the base is not nearly gonna be this detailed. But yeah, this is gonna be the really cool part of the base, while everything else is not gonna be nearly as detailed. But yeah, we got an interior area with glowstone-based lighting, so I don't have to light any torches back here. We got these areas, which are both functional and aesthetic, so they let you look at the windows, but also let me fly up to the second floor. But But now I think it's time to get back to building.
It's time for part 2.
So this time-lapse took a really long time. You can see here I'm building up the roof. This build took thousands of framed blocks, which would all have to be placed at the perfect angle, which is why I have those catwalk supports there. And then I'd have to get thousands of glass and basalt to fill in each of the framed blocks and form a good roof. I really probably shouldn't have made this angle, but it did look really good in the end. It just was extremely expensive. And this is, of course, a reason why the video took so long to release. There's a few others, which I outlined in this post. I know we didn't do too much in this episode other than, like, AE2 progression, but that AE2 progression is really significant. In every pack, once you have the infrastructure to produce AE2 with AE2, you can start flying through progression. Like, space was my only constraint with the factory. I can autocraft all the HV and MV components and just start dumping out new machines to put into this new space. Pretty soon I can also get superconductors like mercury, barium, calcium cuprate, which is quite a mouthful. But that's an HV superconductor, which would allow me to get tons and tons of machines. It's actually what Dragonium and Flurban used in their basement, in the base I toured about a month ago. Hopefully next episode we will be able to get into EV more properly, get an EV blast furnace, maybe even start getting tungsten for IV. There's still going to be a lot of AE2 expansion, but we can focus a lot more on Greg Tech. But yeah, you can see I took down the catwalk supports there. We're almost done the roof, except I had to still fill in the other part of the building. This footage is sped up to like 20 times speed. Some parts are 10x, but most of it is 20 times. You can see in the background, snow is starting to melt. We started in summer, the time-lapse is going to end in summer. It took an in-game year. But yeah, time-lapses are kind of difficult in TFG. There might be some GregTech or TFC packs that can run replay mod on their own, but I don't think there's any that can run replay mod with both installed, and that includes TFG. So I had to just bring my friend on and get him to stand still for 13 hours. Of course he moved around, but he is basically like an actual cameraman, even though it's a virtual world. Then I have these new lighting methods using illuminant blocks, I think they're called. Each of these would need a glowstone block, which I processed from cinnabar and redstone out of the thermal centrifuge. Then 3 stacks of light bulbs here. These are slightly cheaper than the illuminant panels I introduced last episode, and I'm going to be using them everywhere from now on. And then stained glass. So in this version there's 2 kinds of framed blocks. There's the regular kind where you just place a block on it, and then there's the 2-part framed blocks, where half of it can be a different block. You can see it in the lighter wood color in those framed panels. And these can take on some really, really cursed shapes, but in the case of framed glass, it's really useful to create, in this case, a GregTech logo. Okay, that was an insane amount of building. I don't know if you could see in the time-lapse, but we went all the way through summer, into fall, into winter, and now it's spring again. It literally took a full year to build this whole thing. But it's worth it, look at this. I just gotta replace this section of floor. There's definitely a few parts that still need to be changed, like I want to replace all of the brown bricks down here with dacite, like the rest of this layer, and I'll have to expand these paths out to make more sense. In here it's looking very nice, especially at nighttime. Though now it really shows how cramped my factory is. This is why we have all this space. Also over here we got a GregTech G, if you can make it out in the cyan glass. I gotta love the symbolism in the stained glass. Oh, and then over here, I need to show how many resources were produced while building this. We're gonna sort by number of items. So silicon dioxide, sodium, normal silicon, aluminum, this is just outrageous. This silicon dioxide is being stored over here, 13,000. That's just insane. There's 4,000 gold nuggets. Lithium is insane, oxygen is insane. We have so much sulfur and tantalite. But then running in the blast furnace, I've got all this titanium. If we just go through dust, this is insane. We're gonna have so much ore for the next episode. Neodymium as well. Manganese. Total resource cost was something like 3.2 thousand rhyolite bricks, 1.5 thousand basalt, 1.6 thousand glass, about 800 quartzite. I might be wrong on these numbers, maybe someone will do the math in the comments. There was a stack of orange illuminant blocks, and then a good 3 stacks of light bulbs. I'd estimate about 600 shale bricks, and all of this stuff was being mass-produced by the rock crushers over here. And I sort of just ran out of space. Like, originally I was doing this item silo connected to storage, but then this sort of just became part of storage if you look at the top there. There's still a lot of cobblestone, but there's a bunch of other things. Oh yeah, my chisel's in there. That's my 4th chisel. I made a lot of them. Sand gives you an idea of how long this was running. I mean, I emptied this crate twice to make glass, and it's still like this. I was gonna start moving machines into this area, but we clearly do not have enough time for that. I have spent a total of 13 hours building this building. I'm not gonna spend more time. I'm good. Thank you all for watching, and God bless.